Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Colton, and in today's video, I want to talk about the benefits of having third-party lens support in your manufacturer camera ecosystem. Now, the reason this comes up is because I recently purchased a Canon camera, and they have allowed third parties to start making lens for their APS-C lineup, but it is still very few. I think there's only 5 lens available, and they're still not allowing lens or third-party manufacturers to produce for their full frame offering. And so that made me think about the benefit of having third-party manufacturers. Now, big reason why Canon doesn't want to allow third parties is actually the first benefit of having third-party manufacturers in your ecosystem. And that is that, yes, they are going to compete with your own lens offerings. If you have a 24-70, surely they're also going to come out with a 24-70 that is intended to be a little cheaper, but still good on image quality, and it's going to compete with your lens offerings. That's true. That's how it works. But the benefit there is that you're going to get people's foot in the door who otherwise might say, Canon's too expensive for me. I can't afford to buy these top-of-the-line 24-70. I just can't afford it. And so they don't buy into your system. But if there is a third-party offering that is around the same zoom range or the same zoom range, then they might say, oh, okay, I can afford to buy into the Canon system and I can get my foot in the door. And what oftentimes happens is that after using that camera for a few months or a few years, they potentially then upgrade into the Canon version of that lens. And so Canon does still end up getting that money and that profit. It's just maybe not all at once. So it makes for a system that has a lot more options in terms of if you're a professional, great, you buy the Canon lens. If you're really on a budget and you just want to get your foot in the door, great, there's some third-party lens offerings for you. And that also boosts competition, not only with Canon, but third party versus third party, where Sigma and Tamron are going to try to compete and make the best lens, but at the best price. And that benefits the consumer who is potentially deciding whether they want to get into your system or not. And there are a lot of people who will not buy into a system if there are not third-party lens options available. So that is kind of the first point. The second point, and I think is maybe even a better point, is that Canon is not going to come out, or any first party is not going to come out with every possible lens. They're going to make certain lens, and that's that. There are lens options out there that might not be worth the risk of Canon making it, but might be something that a third party is willing to risk and that a third party could stand to make profit on. Great example. First party, they're always going to come out with a 50mm prime and a 35mm prime. Those are staples. Those are almost guaranteed to get produced at some point by the first party manufacturer. But they're probably not going to make a 43mm lens. And yet, there is an appetite within some people to buy a 43mm lens and use that. And so that's where a third party can come into play. Canon's not going to want to make it because they're not going to sell enough of those. It's not a popular enough prime lens option. But there is an appetite for that lens, and a third party can say, well, we could do it cheaper and we could produce that lens. We're not going to sell as many as Canon's going to sell 50mm, but we'll sell enough that we as the third party can still make profit. And so you will have third parties produce unusual lens that you don't see first parties making. And so that creates a much more robust ecosystem of lens options for any camera system, Canon, Sony, whoever. And then that brings me really to the final point, which is that if you have one manufacturer producing versus 5 manufacturers producing, it's pretty obvious that the group of 5 are going to be able to build out a much more robust ecosystem significantly quicker than the one manufacturer is going to be able to do it. And in this case, if you have, let's take Sony, they're going to produce lens, of course. But if Sony then also allows Sigma and Tamron and Rokinon and some of these other brands to produce lens as well, then Sony's overall ecosystem is going to explode much faster than if they were just doing it by themselves. And not only will there be significantly more options, but also unique options that Sony would never dream of doing on their own, but the third party might do it. So the ability to really ramp up how much lens are available is way more doable when you have third parties participating and supporting that system as well. And I think Nikon's a great example. Nikon and Canon kind of got in around the same time. They're a little bit later to the game compared to Sony and Fujifilm and Olympus and these other brands who adopted mirrorless significantly quicker. But you look at Nikon compared to Canon, and there are more options because Nikon has allowed third parties to get involved with their system as well. And so there's a overall more robust system. So Canon is kind of the option that has the least amount of lens options available. And certainly the price points are not really diverse there either. So I think Canon could really stand to open their system to third parties completely and grow that overall ecosystem at a much faster rate. And I think a lot more people are going to become interested in that system because there's going to be way more lens available, but also there's going to be way more price points available. And so a variety of people will get their foot in the door, and there'll be more options for them as they continue to grow with that brand. So I think those are the three main reasons why a third-party manufacturer is so critical. And of course, we used Canon as a good example of why that could hurt or help your brand. I think these are very no-brainer reasons why you would want to have third-party manufacturers in your system. And I certainly hope that Canon will open up their ecosystem of lens fully to third-party manufacturers and continue to build out their own lens as well. So that's my take on why third-party lens are beneficial, and I'm using Canon as a prime example of that fact. But do let me know what your thoughts are. I know that this can be something that is a bit controversial and people may have a variety of opinions, but that's my opinion, and as a consumer, I feel like it makes a lot of sense to have that opinion. But yeah, if you got anything out of this video, do give me a thumbs up. And if you want to see more content like this, hit the subscribe button. That's going to keep you in the know for when the next video drops. But for now, I'm Colton. I'll see you in the next one.